Welcome to Message-meg, everyone. I'm Meg Farris. Today we're going to talk about everything you want to know about breast reconstruction. But we're going to do something different. We're going to have very honest and touching conversations with women willing to share their most personal stories with you. You're going to see complete, unedited before and after pictures so you can see that you can be made whole and well again. You'll want to stick around to see groundbreaking technology and one of the very first patients ever to have real nipples and areolas restored after a complete double mastectomy. Top surgeons who have patients from around the world will show us all of your options. Breast cancer survivors who have had botched surgeries will show and tell us their stories, while the reconstructive surgeons will explain how to fix those problems. And then finally, a survivor who's an attorney and patient's advocate will educate us about what your rights are and what insurance must pay for by law. For years as a medical reporter, I've had a front row seat to see and tell viewers about medical breakthroughs. This one involves giving a woman back a real nipple and areola. And for this one, I got to follow a PhD student for years from his lab at Tulane in New Orleans, all the way to Dr. Sullivan's first patient to get one. Take a look.
I cried a lot in the bathroom.
Why?
I just wanted to be me. I wanted to be a woman.
And it was for you.
I hated looking at myself in the mirror. But I still had hope no matter what. I wasn't giving up.
In the mid-90s, Kathy Moore got the most joyous news from her doctor. But it was soon followed by the most devastating news from another. She was expecting her first baby, but just 3 weeks after her girl came into the world, her doctor called.
I was 32 years old. I had no idea. And we walk in there and he's like, you have breast cancer and you need to get a mastectomy on both breasts. And I just sat there in shock.
What followed was months of fighting for her life. At a time when all new moms are exhausted, Kathy was recovering from a mastectomy and on chemo.
I couldn't hold her in the beginning on my own because I was cut, and so my mother-in-law would lay her in my arms. This is emotional. But I just kept pushing through because I knew I had to live, but I didn't know if I would because I knew nothing about cancer.
And for 29 years, Kathy has pushed through. There have been multiple breast surgeries and failures with reconstructions of implants, fat and skin from her abdomen, later from her back, then even later from her buttocks area. There have been skin expanders, more implants, infections, and scar tissue problems. Nipples and areolas have been surgically created and tattooed.
I had them tattooed on, 3D, all of that. They were beautiful, but I still wanted that texture and feeling.
What Kathy didn't know was one day, this young PhD student in the Center for Stem Cells and Regenerative Medicine at Tulane would end her quest to feel whole again. For the last decade, Dr. Nick Pashos was developing a way to give patients back a real nipple and areola. Medical Watch followed his years of hard work on this innovation, first in 2016.
There are 2.8 million breast cancer survivors living in the United States, so this is a huge community, and I think it's something that hopefully I can help out at some point.
And in 2017, as the scientific community started to take notice.
It feels great, and I would love to just see it on one person and help one person, and I think my entire PhD that I've spent it on would be worth it.
What Dr. Pashos created is a breakthrough. Just as there are organ donors after death, a real nipple and areola can be harvested as well, or taken from mastectomy tissue. He then removes the living cells and DNA and is left with a natural collagen and elastin graft like scaffolding. That can sit on a shelf and be stitched on top of a reconstructed breast, no matter how long ago the mastectomy was. Then your own cells, blood vessels, and maybe even in some people, nerves grow through, making it your own.
He recognized that the techniques we had for reconstructing them were really insufficient, not adequate enough.
Dr. Scott Sullivan is co-founder of the Center for Restorative Breast Surgery and St. Charles Surgical Hospital. They perform 1,300 breast surgeries a year. Women come from all around the world for their expertise and ability to save the patient's natural nipple and areola when other major medical institutions can't. But for patients where that's not possible, there's new hope. Now, Dr. Pashos's intervention, called the NAC graft, has gone from an idea in the lab to one of the very first patients in the country, Kathy.
A very simple procedure, takes 10 minutes in the clinic, and their body grows into it. So it looks just like a nipple, and it will become incorporated within about 2 to 3 weeks.
I thought I was going to go to the hospital. He did this right in the office. It's amazing. It is freaking amazing what he gave me. The nurses were in there. They're like, they're beautiful. They really are.
Dr. Sullivan is running one of the first clinical trials with the NAC graft. Would you say of all the technology, this is the most natural looking of anything that can be done right now?
It's the best. By far and away, this product really creates a very natural, lifelike result.
On an emotional level, what do you hear from these women?
Oh, they tear up. They can't believe it. You know, now they're starting to see themselves as they were.
Patients will be able to choose grafts that give them the look they want. It's for women and men who've lost that tissue from cancer, failed breast lift or reduction surgery, even for skin reduction after major weight loss. Meeting Nick and his invention changed the course of your life.
Yes. Yep. It's been a wild and fun time for the past 5 years.
New Orleanian and Tulane biomedical engineering graduate Billy Heim met Dr. Nick Pashos in the developmental stages. The two opened and now run Bioaesthetics in North Carolina. Their goal is to transform lives with biomaterials and focus on quality of life products like grafts for prolapsed pelvic organs, third-degree burns, and pressure ulcers. Years ago, they hoped one day they could help just one patient. Now they have. There were lots of tears about the difference that it's making 32 years later in her life. How does that make you feel?
Unbelievable. You know, it's humbling, and but also just it makes all the hard work and the late nights and the trials and tribulations of the startup life. So it makes all that worth it, to know how the impact that it's making.
Now at 60, with that baby girl nearing 30, Kathy has the quality of life she's waited 3 decades for.
I pushed through it, and I was determined to do any and everything to keep fighting, and I won, and I'm still winning.
And here with us now are Dr. Nick Pashos, founder, director, and CEO of Bioaesthetics Corporation in North Carolina. He's joined by Billy Heim, the COO of Bioaesthetics Corporation, and the survivor you just saw in our story, Kathy Moore, who, again, that still makes you emotional watching that. Yes.
It does, yeah.
So let's talk first about with Nick and Billy. Tell us, you formed this company, and you're right now testing this grafting of a cadaver, areola, and nipple. Nick, let's start with where are you right now in having people try this out, the clinical trial?
Sure. So we're working through 2 different clinical studies right now. One is at Dr. Sullivan's clinic down in New Orleans, and one is at Stanford Medicine out in Palo Alto.
And so it's FDA cleared, or what's the correct term? The FDA has said, yes, go forward. Right now, you're just trying to get the best results and which patient it's best for?
Yeah, so the product is considered a human-derived cell and tissue product, much like a transplant or any other human product that would go from a donor to recipient. We take donor tissue, we remove all the cells and DNA in it so that it doesn't elicit immune response. So we're through the FDA as a registration, and these clinical studies are first in human studies that we're able to test the protocol of engraftment to give a standard of procedure for when it is for adoption.
And so, Billy, y'all have formed this company, Bioaesthetics, And tell us, what is the company doing now? You're just trying to get the best results so you can share this with doctors across the country? How does that work?
Yeah, that's right, Meg. As Nick said, we have registered the product with the FDA, and we have completed audits with the FDA. So in theory, we could take this commercial, but from our responsibility side as a company, we want to make sure that we know how to use it, how it's going to behave on patients, because prior to this, we only did animal studies. In those animal studies, you can only infer so much. So prior to releasing it commercially to the market, we wanted to make sure that we had an ironed out procedure so that we know what to expect for outcomes for patients, so we don't give false hope of how it will behave.
I want people to look at Kathy's pictures, and I want you to see that there are two beautiful breasts here with real nipples, real areolas, and this is a woman who went through breast cancer, as you just saw in the story, 30 years ago and had nothing. This is a work of art. They look like beautiful, normal breasts. And Kathy, this is so important, and I want our viewers to understand, you wanted to share this because this was life-changing to not only have your breasts restored, but to have real nipple and areolas restored.
Yes, absolutely.
Why? Tell us why that was just so important.
It's part of who we are as women, and it was very important for me. Some women can do without it, but it was everything I wanted.
Yeah. And when you, now we're going to talk to Dr. Sullivan about the grafting, because you've been, as you're going through the clinical trial, you've been grafted a few times, but when you see the result, and you look more like you looked before you had cancer, you look in the mirror.
It's amazing, honestly, it really is, to see that he's and Nick have done this wonderful thing for us.
Life-changing.
Very.
I mean,
absolutely.
it doesn't look any different.
No.
So Dr. Sullivan, explain, this is something that can sit on a shelf and that the body's not going to reject, and you, in 10 minutes in an office visit, sew these areolas and nipples on, and then the patient's tissue grows through it?
Correct. It really is credit to them, ingenious little invention of theirs. And it satisfied one of our problems with breast reconstruction. Great, we got sophisticated, we could do the microsurgical stuff, competently, high success rate, but reconstructing the nipple papilla, the techniques we use are more like an origami. Take the skin, wind it up, and make the nipple, but it's just fat on the inner cord and flattens. And so it's one of the telltale signs you'll get a reconstructed breast that doesn't have a nipple and areola, that it's not real. And so their little invention it's the cherry on the top, yeah? And makes it really nice. It's easy to apply. They can't reject it. Their tissues grow into it. It becomes them. It maintains its projection and its look. It's an authentic nipple papilla. So it works out quite well.
And are you finding that the pigment comes back in the areola? Are you finding that nerves or blood supply is growing through, or not yet? Are we still not there yet?
We're still in the early stages, but it is interesting that the handful of women that we've done it actually experience much more sensation than I thought. Personally, I thought there would be very little, if any, sensation, and they're experiencing much more. Wow. So it's turning out very nice.
And so why did Kathy need to have a couple of tries with this, being your first patient? That's just part of clinical trials?
It is, and so it is a nipple it has no cells within it. It's a matrix of collagen. If you looked at it under the microscope, it would look like a sponge, a lattice work of collagen. So within those vacuoles, or the openings, your cells need to grow. Okay, they need nourishment to grow. So the first time we put it on, actually the graft was taking great. It was a technical issue on my part because I used some stitches that dissolved in 2 weeks, and they really needed to not dissolve. And so the nipple started to come off despite starting to be incorporated. So it's me understanding, what I needed to do the little procedure properly. So we've evolved with that. We're doing other nuanced things of what's called banking the nipple. You take the graft, tuck it in a little incision in your body, which allows your cells to grow into it under sterile situation. Then have a birthing ceremony where we come into the office. This is an office technique. Takes a few minutes to retrieve it and sew it on. And that shows great promise to shorten the time with which it's incorporated and heighten the success.
Nick, I have to tell you, when our story first ran, I got messages from people around the country saying, I want to meet Kathy, I want to know more about this. What is your reaction to what Dr. Sullivan and Kathy are saying, that what they're learning? Because this is the time right now is learning who it's best for.
Yeah, and that's what the clinical study is all about. And I've been very fortunate to work with Dr. Sullivan for several years, and I've gotten to know Kathy over the past year or so. Patients like Kathy, doctors like Dr. Sullivan, they're the people who make this possible, right? We can do everything we can possibly do in lab, but when it comes time to actually action and using skills to put something into play, that all comes down to a physician, a very talented surgeon. And when it comes to a patient who's willing to sign on to a clinical study on something that's never been done on patients before, that comes down to patients like Kathy. And so it's just a perfect, coming together of technology, physician, and also patients that make this possible. And we are forever indebted for those first patients that receive it, just like Kathy.
Absolutely wonderful. One of my favorite things was you had never met Kathy. I'd been following you in the lab, and then you saw the story and you and Kathy met, and you got to see your years of hard work in the lab at Tulane, and you got to see somebody who shed tears of joy for what you did. How did that make you feel?
It was very touching. So the first time I saw Kathy's name was actually on your program. And since then, Kathy and I have gone together. I've been at her follow-ups, not her most recent ones, but for 4 months of them previously. We've grabbed lunch together and also went to a benefit together. And it's been really something else to kind of have an idea, bring it to ideation, work in the lab your entire life, right? And then to come out and actually see the people who it may be touching, and how it changes, someone's opinion about themselves or other people, right? And so it's been a really wonderful sort of journey on my side to experience that, which I never thought I would. So it's, I'm incredibly thankful to Kathy giving me the opportunity to get to know her.
Congratulations. Billy, so if there are doctors watching and there are people who want to learn more or try this, what Dr. Sullivan's doing, or learn more about your company and some of the other bio products that y'all are planning for the future, can people just contact Bioaesthetics?
Sure. I mean, obviously our website's a great resource, www.bio-aesthetics.com. Also, our clinical studies are both listed on clinicaltrials.gov. We have the one ongoing Dr. Sullivan's practice at the Center for Restorative Breast Surgery, and another ongoing at Stanford University, both of which, details can be found out on clinicaltrials.gov. So, in addition, some of our other products, we are working on tissue grafts for burns and pressure ulcers and pelvic organ prolapse. And those are primarily grant funded at this point, so they're not totally up on our website to learn about, but there are some press releases out there.
Okay, so boy, I hope you'll have the same success. And Dr. Sullivan, who are you still looking for people in this current clinical trial, or are you just right now referring your own patients? Because I know people are going to be interested in this. They want to be the next Kathy.
No, we're still looking. It's great that they're providing us with all the nipple grafts we need. It's a free service that we do. It just takes a couple minutes in the clinic to do. So we welcome all inquiries, look forward to it.
And who's a candidate? People who have the 2 breast mounds rebuilt but don't have a nipple, if they've already gotten the tattoo, the 3D tattoo, can they come? Who can and can't are best candidates? All
of those, anyone who doesn't have a nipple. Interestingly enough, there's some women who have cosmetic procedures, a mastopexy or mastopexy algal reduction, that lose their nipple.
They die from blood supply.
They're candidate as well. So it's the best, most sophisticated and reliable way we can recreate a natural nipple. It's
real life, and it's changing. It's changed your life, huh, Kathy? You look in the mirror and you feel whole again.
Absolutely. Yeah. happy and whole.
Yeah, and a lot of people, there are people who choose not to do that.
Right.
I talked to one woman who had the 3D, and she said, and I told her about what you were doing, and she said, you know what, I'm done, and that's fine too. And it's a matter of a woman's choice about
I was happy with that when we did it, but then I kept coming in because I wanted Phil to remember in the nipple, and he was working on something and wanted me to wait, and then.
Yeah. Are you getting any sensation back, or is it still too soon?
I have a little.
You do?
Yeah.
So when you touch yourself, you can feel that, whereas before it was numb?
Was never really numb. There was still feeling, not, what I had before, but there was still a little feeling.
Yeah. And Dr. Sullivan, do you think we'll get to the point where the nipple responds to hot and cold, stimulation, where the nipple protrudes and then retracts?
I would expect it will probably just retain its form, which would be in a semi-erect position. One of the innovations we're working on in breast reconstruction is reinnervation. So taking nerve grafts and trying to reinnervate the nipple-areolar complex. That's still in development as well. I think that will complement this product.
All right. Well, Kathy, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Next on Message Meg, reconstructive breast surgeon Dr. Scott Sullivan is joined by his colleague, Dr. Frank Delacroce. They'll take an in-depth look at how they treat breast cancer and restore natural breasts.
Everything you love about the WWL Louisiana Morning News is right here on WWL Plus. Breaking news, local weather, and your favorite news team whenever you want. Get the WWL Plus app today. Live, local, and always on.
There are folks out there that have that instilled fear of severe storms. I try and quell those fears by answering all of the questions that the public may have and put folks' mind at ease.
WWL weather only on WWL Louisiana.
Everything you love about Great Day Louisiana is right here on WWL Plus. Food, music, and culture. Everything you love about Louisiana whenever you want.
Watch only on WWL Plus, live, local, and always on.
Now joining us now are reconstructive breast surgeons Dr. Frank Delacroce and Dr. Scott Sullivan from the Breast Center for Restorative Breast Surgery and the St. Charles Surgical Hospital. It is the only hospital in the world dedicated to breast reconstruction for women facing breast cancer. Okay, we have a lot to unpack here. Let's first start, Dr. Sullivan, with what are women's options when they are told they have breast cancer and they know they're going to have a mastectomy or a prophylactic mastectomy to make sure the other breast doesn't get the cancer?
Sure. Options are really three. They could choose reconstruction, two courses, implant-based versus their own tissue, or a combination of both, a hybrid. There's also an option for no reconstruction. There's some women who choose to not have some and have what's called a flat closure.
And so when they get the reconstruction with their own tissue, this is what people from around the world come to you and Dr. Delacroce to do, this reconstruction. Explain, not in too much detail, but you're taking their fat from another area and making it into their breasts. Tell us about that.
Correct. It's the gold standard of breast reconstruction. Many of the techniques we've innovated here in New Orleans, in fact. But it's where you can take fat, the dream, taking fat from somewhere, my belly, my butt, my bra roll, and we can microsurgically transplant it to the breast to reconstruct the breast. We're restoring the breast. So you could save the exterior as well. So you've saved the nipple and the skin, and you're just putting a new filler in. And so it's something that's lifelike. You have great recovery of sensation as well as form of the breast. It lasts your whole life.
And so, Dr. Delacroce, let me bring you into this conversation. So how do you know if a patient needs to have everything removed or just taking out the fat inside the breast and saving the nipple and areola? What determines that?
A lot of studies argue about the inclusion or exclusion criteria, and that's been an evolving question over time. The good news is almost every patient is a candidate for full preservation of their skin envelope and their nipple areolar complex, unless they have very advanced disease or the disease is right adjacent to the nipple itself.
But
And
a
that's
lot
relatively uncommon.
But a lot of other doctors in other places aren't doing this. They're doing skin expanders and breast implants. Why is y'all surgical technique so far advanced and giving hope to women who think that their only choice is to have expanders? Dr. Sullivan?
Well, fortunately, from our training and our own curiosity and interest, we've decided to emphasize microsurgical breast reconstruction. Unfortunately, it's not offered throughout the U.S. It's why more than 70% of our patients come from out of state. It's a sophisticated level of reconstruction. It takes special training.
Dr. Delacroce, is it best to do reconstructive surgery right at the time of the mastectomy rather than wait?
Short answer is yes, almost always. The opportunity for an aesthetic result that is nearly untouched in appearance is there with an immediate reconstruction. And as I mentioned, almost every patient in today's modern era is a candidate for a skin nipple-sparing mastectomy. And so doing everything all at one time eliminates multiple surgeries, multiple recoveries, and really does take the result to a different level.
Wow, because the results, I mean, we're putting up pictures of some of the results. They're beautiful. These women don't look like someone who've had cancer and you've made them well and made them sort of whole. Their results look almost like aesthetic surgery, like they went to a cosmetic surgeon. And what does that do for a woman's psyche? Just seeing herself whole and not having a reminder in the mirror every day, I am a cancer survivor.
It is life-altering. The diagnosis of breast cancer is devastating, and so they start to think, I'm going to be mutilated. It's going to affect me, my relationships with my special spouse or individuals will be compromised. And so when we're able to show them these pictures that in fact we can make you look many times better than they started, they feel good for a change.
So in many cases you would recommend women having their own natural tissue because they get a tummy tuck in the process, especially if they've had children, and it's more natural. But I guess what you're talking about, it's complicated, and I want to tell all of our viewers watching, it's because this is microsurgery, vascular microsurgery that's involved because fat is living and it needs to keep its blood supply. You don't just take fat and move it somewhere. So that's where the complication of the long surgical procedure comes in.
Correct. That's the complexity of it. Just like transplanting a kidney, doing a transplant of a heart or liver. Just the same with fat. We could take a block of fat from someone with a little blood vessel. Blood vessels are about 2 millimeters, size of a tip of a pin.
Wow.
And we use a needle that's thinner than your eyelash and a thread that's connected to it that's half the diameter of your hair. And under the assistance of a microscope, we're able to connect little blood vessels together. Now the tissue's alive. And it survives. It's your tissue, so you can't reject it. It doesn't extrude, it doesn't expire, it doesn't rupture. So it lasts your whole life. Your sensory nerves are able to grow through it. So there are plenty of benefits, but it takes the commitment of a surgeon, of a microsurgeon.
And Dr. Delacroce, do you have people or patients, women who come in and say, well, my family and everyone says, well, just get well. Don't worry about what you look like after. And how do you address that and explain to them that they can be well and have their body back?
I think it's a matter of educating the family and the patient who's there to see us for care. Most of the time, after spending a few minutes with the folks that come down to see us and their family member with them in the room, the thing they respond with is, I'm not as afraid anymore. I feel so much better. I had this cloud over me and I feel tremendous relief knowing what can be done. And when the family member sees that energy brought back into the room, it's not hard to convince the surrounding, supporting caretakers that this is good and valuable time to be spent on the front end for a lifelong benefit.
What about if a woman has had or needs radiation or chemotherapy? Then to each of y'all, how is the reconstruction timed with that?
We'll often do the reconstruction still at the time of the mastectomy. Young women who are triple negative commonly will have neoadjuvant or preoperative chemotherapy. So in that case, they'll do their course of 3 to 6 months of chemotherapy. 4 to 6 weeks upon conclusion, they'll have the mastectomy, at which time we'll do the reconstruction of their choice. Sometimes they require radiation post-surgically. That there'll be about a 6 weeks interval with which they recover, and then they do their radiation therapy. So it doesn't interrupt really the course of our plan for reconstruction, which is incorporated within their care, but also placed strategically so they could do their proper chemotherapy before surgery or after, and also if they need post-surgical radiation. And
they can still have these gorgeous results that we're looking at that are just incredible. Dr. Delacroix, what about lymphedema? When a woman has her breasts remade out of her own natural tissue, is it less likely that her arm is going to swell up and have the lymph problems?
Short answer again, yes. Whenever we bring living tissue that has its own vascular pump built into it, we bring along what are called dermal lymphatics that are a rich source of help in that regard. It also helps not to have the scarring develop in the armpit after the work is done, and adding that softness, that rejuvenative transplanted fat works against all of those things that compound lymphedema.
It's amazing to me that more doctors across the country aren't doing this. So about how long, Dr. Sullivan, does one of these surgeries last if you're reconstructing both breasts with natural tissue?
If you do it at the time of the mastectomy, it could last 5 or 6 or 8 hours, sometimes 10, depends. Some of the reconstructions you do are modular being we take some from the behind, we take some from the belly, we connect them together. So it takes 4 flaps, 4 little batches of tissue to make it. It passes for the patients very comfortably. Anesthesia is very safe. The complication rate is very low. Success rate is in excess of 90%. So again, very sophisticated stuff, precision surgery, but worthwhile.
Yeah, and it's art, because where you're taking it from is not going to look like it has a divot in it. It's going to look smooth and beautiful and just like someone went and had a cosmetic tummy tuck.
Many of the cosmetic techniques are incorporated in the surgical techniques we use. Same as we tighten their muscles up, pull everything down on the belly, so exactly like a tummy tuck. But instead of the tummy tuck, they throw the tissue away. When we do reconstruction, we're preserving it and microsurgically transplanting it. We're
talking about tummy tucks, and a lot of women who've had children have the excess skin, or their muscles are separated in their abdomen. I remember back in the 1990s, done here in New Orleans, was identical twins. One had breast cancer, one didn't. The one who had breast cancer was a marathon runner, didn't have extra fat and skin, and didn't have children. But her twin wasn't a runner and did have children. So they took her skin and fat and gave it a new breast to the one who had cancer. And that's just remarkable, because genetically their fat and skin was the same.
It was identical. And in fact, we were on the same team with Dr. Allen, who did that over there at Baptist Hospital.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Yes, and people are coming from all over the world saying, help me, my doctor's offering me something that's less than adequate, or what do they say? How do they find you?
Well, the internet is a powerful source of information. Also, the network of women who have experienced it, good or bad experiences. They all participate in blogs and other teaching or educational sessions.
And we're going to hear from some of those patients and see things that have gone wrong and see what y'all have fixed. So when we come back, 2 breast cancer survivors will show us and talk about what went wrong with their reconstructive surgeries, and the doctors will explain how they can fix it.
Nobody never talks about what happens if things go wrong with your surgery. What do you do?
When your body does not feel right and does not look right, it really it affects your mind, it affects your body.
Have you ever felt like someone in power was hiding something? A lie, a bribe, abuse of their power? I'm WWL Chief Investigative Reporter David Hammer, and I don't just report the stories, I uncover the truth.
I was born and raised in Louisiana, and you fall in love with so much of what's unique about this community. So when it comes to the work that I do, I started to dig a little bit deeper. That's why we did Death of a Neighborhood, Survival of a Culture, and Follow the Line. What motivates me to love and fight for it is making sure that no one is erased. My name is Sharice Gibson. I love Louisiana, and I'll fight for it.
My love for Louisiana influences the work that I do every single day because I love this community too. I'm invested in the outcomes of what happens in our community every day. And because this community matters to me, I know how much it matters to everybody else. Southeast Louisiana is a place where you come for the food, the music, and the culture, and you stay for the people. And it's such a wonderful thing to be a part of. My name is Devin Bartolotta. I love Louisiana, and I fight for it.
I largely grew up in Slidell, so this is really the place that's been my home ever since. One of the biggest ways that I've been able to make an impact in Louisiana is by doing investigative work. The stories that I did about Jack Strain, the St. Tammany Sheriff, and through Down the Drain. People have had solutions given to them because we did those stories. I absolutely love the people of Louisiana. Every story that I tell is about them. My name is Katie Moore. I love Louisiana and I fight for it.
I care deeply about people and their families. If we're talking about severe weather, tropical systems coming in, what can they expect? Really what motivates me is knowing people are safe and they know exactly what to do when the weather strikes.
WWL weather only on WWL Louisiana.
Welcome back to Message Meg. There are times when women face two difficult situations. First, the breast cancer diagnosis and wanting to get well. And for some, having to live with a botched surgery result. Breast cancer survivor Karen Siegler wants to show and tell her story of multiple surgeries and disfiguring results and how Dr. Delacroce made her whole again. And Carrie Franklin is here with me. She's currently going through surgeries with different doctors after years of complications from other doctors. And welcome to you, Carrie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for
first of
having
all,
me.
all right, let's start with Karen. Karen, give us a little background on your story. You are out in public showing pictures and talking about your botched surgery. Tell me why that was so important.
I had a very unique situation, and I think after learning about what Dr. Delacroce and his team does, I realized it wasn't that unique. So I just thought by sharing my story, it would help other women that were going through the same thing that I was going through, and realize that there are solutions and there are answers, and you can become whole again and have your life back.
How did that change you just psychologically and day-to-day living? I read your story where you got back to working out again, which was so important to you.
It was, it still is, so is dancing. When your body does not feel right and does not look right, it really, it affects your mind, it affects your body, obviously. And once you are the person you were before all the surgery and before the problems happened, it's such a wonderful feeling to be back to the person that you once were and you knew you could be again. Yeah. So as soon as I could get back to all of my activities, I did that because I just wanted to have a normal life again.
And Karen, you are in Colorado and you found Dr. Delacroce, on the internet, and saw pictures of other surgeries he had fixed?
No, I was actually in Florida at the time, and after my second surgeon completely destroyed my body, I was told instead of implants, I needed to have the surgery where they would use my own tissue. So I looked for doctors that could do that. But my case was so severe that the two doctors I saw both told me that I need to go to the breast center in New Orleans. So when I heard that from two different doctors, I called them and I got in touch with Dr. Delacroce. He got in touch with me. I sent all my records and we talked about my case, and he told me how he could help me and what he could do. And that's how I ended up being there.
And Dr. Delacroce, tell me, do you see Karen's story commonly?
First of all, hello, Karen. It's been a little while.
Hi,
Good
Doc.
to see you. Her comment that it's not unique or unusual, to have these scenarios reflects my answer, which is yes. We do see women who come in with unfortunate situations from previous surgeries that haven't worked out from all over the world. It now represents probably 6 out of 10 operations that I do. And so it's more common than it should be by a lot.
Wow, that's and let's bring in Carrie Franklin into the conversation. You were first diagnosed in 1996, and you've had complications and problems from other surgeons, not the ones that are with us today. And when we first met, it was at a breast cancer fundraiser, and you came up with tears in your eyes because you said you were having such complications and actually fluid coming out, and you were miserable.
I was at that time, and when I saw you speaking at the function, I said, well, nobody never talks about what happens if things go wrong with your surgery. What do you do? And I was just left in limbo, really, because, you know, it was a 2-part surgery. And the second surgery that I had, it didn't look any better than the first. And I just asked him, so what we gonna do? What is just how I'm gonna be? He said, well, I thought it would look better than what it did.
And there was no, from these other doctors, there was no fix for you at the time. They couldn't offer you a third surgery to fix, or were you scared to go back to the doctors who had already botched it?
I did, but I thought he would reach out to me because I was devastated, and I didn't think he would just leave me in that space because I didn't know what to do next. And I said, well, I guess this is the end of it after that. And he didn't give me no other alternatives as what I could do next.
We're happy to say that now, this year, you're going through good reconstructive surgery that you're going through at a cost that has been difficult because of you having to go through these other things. Dr. Sullivan, is Carrie's story what you see a lot?
Unfortunately, it is, as Dr. Delacroix said. Not sure why there's not a commitment by the surgeons. I'm sure they do their best, they just don't have the skill. Some of them fail to acknowledge that it's inadequate as well. And you hear them say, well, it's good that you just have to be happy you're alive. We find that a pretty offensive thing to say. It gravely affects the patients, like I said, emotionally, psychologically. So we're glad you found Dr. Wise.
Let me ask you.
Thank you.
Let me ask you about. So, is it harder to reconstruct someone who's been through these botched surgeries for years, or I know it's always better right at the time of the mastectomy, but you're able to fix people like Carrie and Karen and have a nice result?
It is, unfortunately, it is harder because they may have messed up other places where we could have taken tissue or other alternatives. It still can be done. We can still deconstruct them and reconstruct them, but our options tend to be a little more limited. The techniques, however, will be more sophisticated, still of high success. And you can still, as you saw those pictures, still get very favorable results.
Now let me ask you, African American women more often have what's called triple negative breast cancer. Is there anything different for African American women such as Carrie with reconstruction, or is it all the same and it doesn't matter that there's a different type of cancer than other people?
Well, the reconstruction is all the same. Unfortunately, like you said, many times the disease is more aggressive in African American women. Many times also us getting out and educating the group of all minorities of what's available to them. So that's on our fault doing that as well. But there's still a variety of techniques available that can give very nice results at a very high success rate.
Yeah. So Karen, let's come back to you and Dr. Delacroix. How long has it been since Dr. Delacroix fixed you all back perfectly?
I think the last time I saw him was probably 2015. Is that right, Doc?
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
It's been a minute.
So it's been years. And have you been out talking to other women and showing them these before and after pictures and what was wrong and now how women can be whole again?
Well, I've worked with breastcancer.org a number of times and did a few videos for them about a year ago. And I talk to anyone I know that is going through a diagnosis, and whatever help they need, I give them. A lot of people want to go on their own and want to make their own decisions, but if anyone's ever on the fence, I'm the first one to tell them to go to the breast center, and they will have the answer to every question that you have.
I mean, your story is just remarkable, but the fact that you're sharing it so other women don't have to go through what you've been through. Dr. Delacroce, what do you want to tell women out there, the people who could be future Karens and Carries?
Do your homework. In today's modern era, we have access to information about everything at our fingertips with AI and the internet and every other thing in between. Features like this that you're doing today, Meg, go a long way towards spreading the word, so we appreciate that very much. The good news is we can do a lot, even in a very bad situation, so don't lose hope.
And the other thing I wanted to ask Dr. Sullivan is, Carrie is 62 years old. Age doesn't matter.
Thought she was 32.
I agree. But age doesn't matter in reconstruction, right? I mean, y'all operate on patients of all ages?
We've operated on, obviously, successfully those in their 80s. You know, and age is a number, so it's physiologically how the patients are. And so in the 70s, 80s are very common. Still fantastic results. Of course, we need you to be medically fit, where your heart is still good and everything's controlled. But there is no age limit, really.
Carrie, did you have people in your life who said, look, you're alive, you're healthy, don't worry about what you look like? Did you get that from people?
Well, I didn't really, because it was important to me. And to walk around with not having a breast anymore, and that's what makes me a woman, so I needed that. I really did. So it was kind of hard on my kids because they saw me go through the physical, mental, and it was kind of hard, the second surgery. And it was like, Mama, please don't do it again.
They wanted you to stop even though the second one was botched.
Right. Yeah. So what I did was, I kind of just threw it at them all of a sudden and give them time to think this time. So I said, listen, this is it. This is, you know, I promise you, this is going to be the one.
Yeah.
I said, so we won't go through this again, I promise you. So they just smiled, okay.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Yeah, you see, I didn't see you smile the first time I'd met you. Karen, what about you? Tell me about, you know, the way you've been living since you've been fixed right. Your life has gone on and you've gotten back into all your activities?
Yeah, my life has gone on. I moved to Colorado to be near my daughter and my grandchildren, and I mean, life is great. You know, the one thing I don't live my life as a breast cancer survivor. I just live my life. And my experiences, whoever they can help, I'm so happy to share. And I'm so honored that you asked me to join you today, because the more people that know about this wonderful center and the results that it can give you, the better the world will be. And if anybody ever wants to talk to me, I'm always open to do that. But I'm just living my life now, and I'm happy, and I like the way I look. And, you know, the scars don't matter as much as they did back when this first happened, because I'm alive and I'm healthy, and, you know, it's just a little bit of lines through my body that someone else might not have. But the job that Dr. Delacroce and his team did was just amazing. I mean, the results that I have seen are life-changing. So whatever little scars or little memories I have of the bad things, they're all erased by the wonderful life I have now, and how good I feel about my body and how good I feel about my life.
And did you have people in your life say, oh, you're healthy, don't worry about what you look like under your clothes?
No, nobody ever says that to me, because they know when I make up my mind to do something, I'm going to do it. And, you know, I was newly divorced at the time, and I did not want to go through my life without breasts. That was a decision I made right away. So no one would have changed my mind about that.
Yes, I completely understand. Well, Carrie and Karen, best of luck to you. I'm so glad you found these doctors.
Thank you
So
so
your
much for
life can
having
go
me.
on. I appreciate both of y'all. Yes.
Thank
Now,
you.
when we
Thank
come
you.
back, a breast cancer survivor who is an attorney and advocate will explain your treatment options and rights when it comes to insurance payments. Stay there.
As I've worked at WWL over the years, one of the things that I'm most proud of in the investigative unit is the fact that my stories have been able to make a change. That comes in the form of elected officials that ended up in jail because of the stories that we did. And I think that that is one of the things that WWL's legacy is a big part of. It's being a part of the community, it's making a difference, it's being a voice for people who can't use theirs.
WWL Investigates, only on WWL Louisiana.
Welcome back to Message Meg. Kim Sport is a two-time breast cancer survivor, and she's using her experience and knowledge as an attorney to help others navigate the system. She's president of the Cancer Association of Louisiana and started an organization called Breastoration. Kim, welcome. And what is Breastoration?
Breastoration is an organization that helps women who've been diagnosed with breast cancer and are facing the possibility of a mastectomy. We make sure that they're educated to know all of their treatment options before any surgery is performed on them. We provide financial assistance to them to help pay for unmet needs. It could be whether if they have to decide between paying their rent or paying their insurance deductible, we will pay their rent. And we have helped about 300 patients so far with over about 450 surgeries since we started in 2011.
I've read something, and tell me if this statistic is still true, that 7 out of 10 women who are diagnosed with breast cancer aren't told about all these incredible things that Dr. Sullivan and Delacroix are doing to naturally restore your breasts?
It was actually these two doctors that gave me that statistic. When I was diagnosed the first time in 2001, I had a lumpectomy, chemotherapy, and radiation. I thought that I threw the kitchen sink at it and I was never going to be a breast cancer patient again. The second time in 2008, I'd already had my lifetime radiation on the same breast where I had a new cancer, and so mastectomy was my only option. It was working with them and hearing from them and them educating me that I found out that 7 out of 10 women did not know that breast reconstruction was an option. I was fortunate because I'd been in the breast cancer world and I was a second-time breast cancer patient, so it was different for me. And I realized that if I went through this with every type of resource in the world available to me, I can only imagine how hard it is for women who may be impoverished, didn't get the right educational materials from their physicians, may have transportation issues and everything else. So together we figured out a way to help them, and that was through the formation of Breastoration.
So the law now says that your insurance has to pay for breast reconstruction at the time of mastectomy. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. It started with a federal law in 1998. That law had some problems in it. It's still being worked on to this day. But Louisiana immediately adopted the law in 1999 and made the law even stronger in our state. As a matter of fact, we have the strongest breast reconstruction insurance coverage laws in the nation.
Laws you fought for.
Laws we fought for,
Yes.
that's correct. So your insurance policy, if it provides coverage for a mastectomy, must also provide coverage for breast reconstruction.
And Dr. Sullivan, that's important because, again, Dr. Delacroix said this too. Breast reconstruction at the time of mastectomy, you go to sleep, your breasts are removed, you wake up with new breasts, is a much better outcome.
Certainly, aesthetically, it gets a better outcome. Emotionally, certainly it's worthwhile for the patient, psychologically as well, for sure.
And what if women want a prophylactic mastectomy? They know they have mutations in two of the genes, and they feel like this will help them live longer, so they take 2 normal breasts off and have reconstruction. Does insurance have to cover that?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. In Louisiana, it does. And even though it's the federal law says yes, if a plan covers mastectomy, it has to cover reconstruction. In Louisiana, we made it clear it doesn't have to be the same plan, because a woman might make a decision, which is always a personal choice, whether you want to have immediate reconstruction or not. It's a personal choice. So a woman might have made a decision while she was working for one company with one insurance plan to have her mastectomy, and then years later decide she wanted to have a reconstruction, but it was under a different plan. And believe it or not, insurance companies were using that as a loophole, saying, no, the federal government only says that it has to be under the same plan. That's not true in Louisiana.
Interesting, interesting. Dr. Delacroix, how has this made a difference in treating your patients, some of these laws that people like Kim have worked to pass?
It makes all the difference. It empowers them. You're in a vulnerable position anyway. You're in a whirlwind of emotion and concern and decision making, and to have the surety that the third-party payers are compelled to step up to the plate to help you with their obligation alleviates a significant part of the overall stressor.
So were there women who've come to you to be redone, who were botched, like Karen and Carrie we just talked to? I mean, Karen, her story talks about how the doctor gave her these massive breasts when she's a smaller, petite woman, and she didn't want them. He said she had to live with these implants. I mean, does it make a difference in women what they choose to do? Because when they find out that insurance has to pay?
Well, again, Ms. Sport is the lawyer in the room, but what the law says is that the insurer is obligated to cover the reconstruction that is decided upon between and among the patient and her treating physician.
So it's up to the patient and physician. Right. It's not up to the insurance company to tell you what to do. What else do women need to know?
Well, they need to know that that's in the law, that the decision that they make about breast reconstruction and the type of reconstruction that they want to have, whether it's implant or using their own tissue, is that decision that's made in consultation with their physician. And insurance companies in Louisiana cannot refuse to reimburse a physician for services for agreeing with a patient that that's the type of surgery she wants to have. And they also can't limit the coverage that they're going to provide for that service. So you can always ask for state-of-the-art surgeries like the ones provided by the Cancer Center, and your insurance has to cover it here. I think the most important thing in our legislation is that not only does a physician have to tell you at the time of your diagnosis all of your breast cancer treatment alternatives, it has to be told verbally. It has to be handed to the patient in writing. This is the Breast Cancer Treatment Alternatives brochure, which has everything that I think a woman would need to know if she's diagnosed with cancer. And the doctor has to note in the patient's chart the date and time that information was provided to the patient. Otherwise, it's a violation of the Medical Practice Act in Louisiana.
Kim, I'm glad you're doing well and helping other patients. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome.
If you want more on all these procedures we've talked about, go to WWLTV.com and click on message-meg. We'll have all the links there for you, and you can write me at messagemegshow@gmail.com. I really hope you learned something today that makes a difference. Thanks for joining us. On our upcoming episodes of Message Meg, we're taking a deep dive into several topics on hormone replacement and total body health. We're talking to medical doctors who are specialists, patients on their firsthand experience, a sex specialist about the role HRT plays in your sex drive and relationships, as well as a urologist who'll talk about men and andropause and the role hormones play in men's health. And we'll look at hormone replacement and anti-aging of the skin. Be sure to look for those shows coming up on Message Meg.